The first time I heard my wife, Elena, say, "Friends are forever, but husbands come and go," I was crouched behind our kitchen counter, trying to fix her laptop that had crashed for the third time this month. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest, but I stayed perfectly still, listening to her phone conversation through the thin walls of our suburban home. "I know, Margot, I know," Elena continued, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she reserved for her real estate clients and her manipulative best friend. "But you have to understand, David is just so predictable, so boring. Trevor makes me feel alive again." Trevor. The name burned in my brain like acid. I'd heard it mentioned casually over the past few months. "Some guy from the gym," she'd said. "Just a friend, nothing to worry about." "My name is David Chen, and I'm 42 years old. I work in IT for a mid-sized insurance company here in Millbrook, a town that looks like it crawled out of a Stephen King novel. All strip malls, dying businesses, and people pretending their lives are better than they actually are." Elena sells real estate, mostly overpriced suburban houses, to couples who think a mortgage will solve their marriage problems. We've been married for 16 years. We have 2 daughters, Sophie, who's 14 and treats me like I'm radioactive, and Mia, who's 10 and still thinks I hung the moon. At least, I thought she did. "The charity gala is next weekend," Elena was saying. "David will be working late, as usual. We could meet at that little motel on Route 9 afterward." Route 9. The Sleepy Inn. I knew that place. A dump where truckers and cheating spouses conducted their business. The thought of my wife there, with some muscle-bound car salesman named Trevor, made my stomach turn. I quietly closed the laptop and crept back to my home office, a cluttered mess of computer parts and old boxing trophies from my college days. Elena never came in here anymore. Said it smelled like failure and old socks. Maybe she was right. I sat in my desk chair and stared at the wall, trying to process what I just heard. 16 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, joint bank accounts. All of it apparently meant nothing compared to whatever excitement Trevor was providing. The rational part of my brain told me to confront her immediately, demand an explanation, fight for my marriage. But the other part, the part that had been quietly building resentment for years, as Elena dismissed my opinions, rolled her eyes at my jokes, and made me feel like an unwelcome guest in my own home. That part wanted something else entirely. Revenge. Elena walked into the kitchen, her heels clicking on the tile floor. She was dressed for another girls' night out. Tight black dress, too much perfume, makeup applied with the precision of a surgeon. "How's the laptop coming along?" she asked, not really caring about the answer. "Fixed it," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Just a corrupted driver, nothing too complicated." She nodded absently, checking her reflection in the microwave door. "I'm meeting Margot and the girls at that new wine bar downtown. Don't wait up." "Have fun," I said. "Say hi to Margot for me." Elena paused, studying my face for any sign of suspicion. Finding none, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Oh, and David?" she called over her shoulder. "Try not to be so pathetic while I'm gone. Maybe watch something other than those old boxing matches." The door slammed behind her, leaving me alone with the sound of her car pulling out of the driveway. I waited exactly 10 minutes, then grabbed my jacket and keys. The Sleepy Inn looked exactly as seedy as I'd imagined. Peeling paint, flickering neon sign, and a parking lot that had seen better decades. Elena's silver BMW was parked in the back, next to a red Mustang with vanity plates that read TREV1. Subtle. I parked across the street at a 24-hour diner and ordered coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the Clinton administration. Through the window, I had a perfect view of room 237. The curtains were drawn, but I could see shadows moving inside. My phone buzzed, a text from Elena. "Wine bar is so crowded. Probably be here late. Love you." The lie came so easily to her. How long had this been going on? How many girls' nights had actually been motel visits with Trevor? I pulled out my laptop and did what I do best. I started digging. Trevor Daniels, age 34, owned a used car lot called Honest Trevor's Auto Sales. The irony wasn't lost on me. His social media was public, filled with shirtless gym selfies and motivational quotes about living your best life. He looked exactly like the type of guy Elena would fall for, all muscles and no substance. More interesting was his business. 3 complaints with the Better Business Bureau in the past year, 2 lawsuits for selling cars with rolled-back odometers, a man living on borrowed time and other people's money. I spent 2 hours in that diner, learning everything I could about the man who was sleeping with my wife. By the time Elena's BMW pulled out of the motel parking lot, I had a plan forming in my mind. But first, I needed allies. Frank Martinez ran the boxing gym on the south side of town, a place that smelled like sweat, ambition, and broken dreams. I'd been going there twice a week for the past year, partly for exercise, and partly because it was the only place where people treated me like I mattered. "You look like hell, David," Frank said as I walked in the next morning. He was in his 60s, built like a fire hydrant, with hands that had seen more fights than most people see movies. "Wife trouble," I said, wrapping my hands for the heavy bag. "Ah," Frank nodded knowingly. "The kind of trouble that makes a man want to hit things?" "Something like that." I spent an hour working the bag, each punch carrying the weight of 16 years of accumulated frustration. Elena's dismissive comments, her eye rolls, the way she made me feel small in front of our daughters, the casual cruelty of friends are forever, but husbands come and go. "Feel better?" Frank asked as I unwrapped my hands. "Getting there." "You know," he said, cleaning his glasses with deliberate care, "sometimes the best revenge isn't hitting back harder. Sometimes it's hitting smarter." I looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe it's time you stopped being the punching bag and started being the boxer." That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I said yes. My coworker Jake had been inviting me to happy hours for months. I'd always declined citing family obligations. This time, when he asked, I accepted. "Really?" Jake looked genuinely surprised. "Elena won't mind?" "Elena's got her own plans," I said. "Time I made some of my own." The bar was crowded with people from various offices around town. I nursed a beer and actually listened to the conversations around me, instead of checking my phone every 5 minutes to see if Elena needed something. That's when I met Sarah Kim, a divorce attorney with sharp eyes and an even sharper wit. "You look like a man with problems," she said, sliding into the seat next to me. "Is it that obvious? 16 years of marriage, 2 kids, and a wife who thinks you're furniture. Yeah, it shows." I stared at her. "How did you—" "I've seen that look 1,000 times. It's the look of a man who's about to make some very important decisions about his future." She handed me her business card. "When you're ready to stop being a victim, give me a call." I pocketed the card and ordered another beer. Over the next 2 weeks, I said yes to everything. Poker night with the guys from work? Yes. Weekend hiking trip with Jake and his friends? Yes. Joining the company's softball league? Absolutely yes. Elena barely noticed at first. She was too busy with her own activities, which I now knew included regular afternoon visits to Trevor's apartment above his car lot. I'd driven by twice and seen her car parked behind the building. But as my social calendar filled up, Elena started paying attention. "You're never home anymore," she complained one Thursday evening as I got ready for another boxing session with Frank. "I'm exploring new interests," I said, lacing up my sneakers. "Isn't that what you're always telling me to do? Get a life." "I didn't mean—" She paused, clearly struggling with how to phrase her objection without sounding hypocritical. "I just think you should spend more time with your family." "Which family members specifically?" I asked. "Sophie, who hasn't spoken to me in 3 weeks? Mia, who's always at sleepovers? Or you, who's out 4 nights a week with Margot and the girls?" Elena's face flushed. "That's different. Those are work events. Networking." "Right. Networking." I grabbed my gym bag. "Well, I'm networking too. Frank says I've got real potential as a boxer. Might even enter some amateur competitions." This was a lie, but it had the desired effect. Elena's eyes widened with what looked suspiciously like panic. "David, you're 42 years old. You can't just suddenly decide to become a boxer." "Watch me," I said, and walked out the door. At the gym, Frank was waiting with a knowing smile. "How's the campaign going, champ?" "She's starting to notice," I said, warming up on the speed bag. Good. Phase 1 is working. Now comes the hard part, which is making her realize what she's about to lose. Frank was right. Over the next week, I threw myself into my new social life with the enthusiasm of a man who'd been in prison for 16 years. I joined a weekend volleyball league, started attending trivia nights at the local brewery, even signed up for salsa dancing lessons. The old David would never have done any of these things. The old David was too worried about what Elena would think, too concerned with being the perfect husband and father. The new David didn't give a damn what Elena thought, and it was driving her crazy. "I don't understand what's gotten into you," she said one Saturday morning as I got ready for a group bike ride. "You're acting like you're single or something." "Maybe I'm just tired of acting married," I replied, checking my tire pressure. Elena went very still. "What's that supposed to mean?" I looked at her directly for the first time in weeks. Really looked at her. She was still beautiful, I'd give her that. But there was something desperate in her eyes now, something that hadn't been there before. "It means," I said carefully, "that I'm done being taken for granted. David, if this is about me working late, this isn't about your work, Elena. This is about me finally realizing that I deserve better than being treated like an inconvenience in my own life." I grabbed my helmet and headed for the door, leaving her standing in the kitchen with her mouth open. The bike ride was exhilarating. 20 miles through the countryside with a group of people who actually seemed to enjoy my company. When we stopped for lunch at a roadside cafe, I found myself laughing at jokes and telling stories about my IT disasters that had everyone cracking up. One of the women, a teacher named Lisa, even gave me her number for the next group ride, she said with a smile that suggested she had more than cycling in mind. I pocketed the number, not because I planned to use it, but because it felt good to be wanted by someone. When I got home that afternoon, Elena was waiting in the living room with a bottle of wine and what was clearly meant to be a seductive outfit. "I thought we could have a quiet evening together," she said, patting the couch next to her. "Just the two of us, like old times." "Sorry," I said, not even slowing down as I headed for the shower. "I've got plans." "What plans?" "Frank's teaching me about combinations tonight. Jab, cross, hook. Basic stuff, but apparently I'm a natural." Elena's face went through several emotions: confusion, frustration, and finally something that looked like fear. "David, wait, we need to talk." I paused at the bottom of the stairs. "About what?" "About us, about our marriage. I feel like we're drifting apart." The irony was so thick, I could have cut it with a knife. "Are we? I hadn't noticed." "Don't be like this, please. I know I've been busy with work, but—" "Elena," I interrupted, "I really don't have time for this conversation right now. Maybe we can schedule something for next week? Check your calendar and let me know when you're free." I left her sitting there with her wine and her desperation, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy. 2 weeks later, Elena made her move. I was in the garage working on an old motorcycle I'd bought from a guy at the gym when she appeared in the doorway wearing nothing but a silk robe and what she probably thought was an irresistible smile. "The girls are at sleepovers," she said, letting the robe fall open slightly. "I thought maybe we could reconnect." I looked up from the engine I was rebuilding. "Reconnect? Is that what we're calling it now?" She moved closer, running her fingers along the workbench. "I miss you, David. I miss us." "Do you?" I set down my wrench and really looked at her. "Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you've been pretty busy reconnecting with other people." Elena went very still. "What do you mean?" "I mean Trevor Daniels. I mean the Sleepy Inn on Route 9. I mean all those girls' nights that aren't actually with girls." The color drained from Elena's face. For a moment, I thought she might try to deny it. Instead, she went on the attack. "You followed me? You spied on me?" "I didn't have to spy very hard. You're not exactly subtle about it." "How dare you? How dare I?" I stood up and Elena actually took a step back. "How dare you? 16 years, Elena. 16 years of marriage, and this is what I get? Secret motel visits with some sleazy car salesman While you tell me I'm boring? David, please, let me explain. Explain what? That friends are forever but husbands come and go? Yeah, I heard that conversation too. Elena's face crumpled. You don't understand. Trevor makes me feel. I don't care what Trevor makes you feel, I said, my voice deadly calm. What I care about is what you've done to our family, to our daughters, to me. It doesn't mean anything, she said desperately. It's just physical. It's not real. Then why do it? Elena opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no answer that wouldn't make things worse. I want you to end it, I said finally. Tonight, call him right now and tell him it's over. David. Right now, Elena. Or I walk out that door and you can explain to Sophie and Mia why Daddy doesn't live here anymore. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed. I listened as she delivered a stilted breakup speech to Trevor, who clearly wasn't taking it well, based on the shouting I could hear through the speaker. It's done, she said when she hung up. David, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. And now we have to figure out how to move forward. Elena nodded eagerly. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. I'll do whatever it takes. Good, I said, because I have some conditions. Over the next hour, I laid out my terms. Elena would quit her job at Margot's real estate firm. I'd suspected for months that Margot was encouraging Elena's affair. She would have no contact with Trevor. She would give me complete access to her phone, email, and social media accounts. And she would attend individual therapy to figure out why she'd blown up our marriage for a cheap thrill. Elena agreed to everything, tears streaming down her face. I love you, David. I know I haven't shown it, but I do love you. We'll see, I said. Love is what you do, not what you say. And what you did was cheat on me with a used car salesman. That night, Elena slept in the guest room while I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was making a mistake by giving her another chance. I wasn't ready to forgive her. I wasn't sure I ever would be, but I was willing to see if she could earn her way back into my trust. It turned out to be a very short experiment. Elena lasted exactly 6 days. On Thursday evening, while she was supposedly at her new job interview at a different real estate firm, I decided to surprise her by picking her up afterward. The address she'd given me turned out to be a Starbucks that had been closed for renovations for 2 months. My phone buzzed with a text. Interview running late. Don't wait up. I drove to Trevor's car lot, and there was Elena's BMW, parked in the same spot as before. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. It wasn't heartbreak this time. It was something much more dangerous. It was resolve. When Elena came home that night, she found me sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open. How did the interview go? I asked without looking up. Great, really great. I think I got the job. That's wonderful news, I said, still typing, especially considering the office has been closed for renovations since last month. Elena froze in the doorway. What? I drove by to surprise you. Funny thing, the whole building is gutted. Construction crews everywhere. But I'm sure you knew that since you were definitely there and not at Trevor's apartment. David! Sit down, Elena. Something in my voice made her obey without argument. I gave you a chance, I said, closing the laptop and looking at her directly. One chance to save our marriage, to put our family back together. And you threw it away for what? A few more hours with your car salesman boyfriend? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I stood up, and Elena shrank back in her chair. You made your choice. Now I'm going to make mine. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. I've been documenting everything, Elena. Every lie, every fake alibi. Every time you chose Trevor over your family. I've got photos, text messages, even a recording of your breakup call where you told him you'd find a way to keep seeing him. Elena's face went white. You recorded me? I protected myself, which, as it turns out, was the smart thing to do. I walked to the counter and picked up a manila envelope that had been sitting there all evening. Divorce papers, I said, dropping them in front of her. Sarah Kim drew them up. You remember Sarah, The divorce attorney I met at happy hour? She's very good at her job. Elena stared at the papers like they were a poisonous snake. David, please, think about the girls. Think about our family. I am thinking about them. I'm thinking about what kind of example we're setting. I'm thinking about whether I want Sophie and Mia to grow up believing that marriage means lying and cheating and treating your spouse like garbage. I can change. No, you can't. You proved that this week. You had every opportunity to choose us, and you chose him instead. Elena started crying then, big, ugly sobs that might have moved me a month ago. Now they just sounded like noise. Where will I go? What will I do? I suggest you figure that out quickly. I want you out of this house by Sunday. You can't just throw me out. This is my home too. Actually, I can. The house is in my name only, remember? You insisted on that when we bought it for tax reasons. Another one of your brilliant ideas that's coming back to bite you. Elena looked around the kitchen desperately, as if seeing it for the first time. The girls. We'll be fine. They'll live here with me during the week and spend weekends with you, assuming you can find somewhere decent to live. Sarah's already worked out a preliminary custody arrangement. You can't turn my daughters against me. I don't have to, I said quietly. You did that yourself. Elena spent the next hour alternating between tears, anger, and desperate bargaining. She promised to cut off all contact with Trevor. She swore she'd be a better wife. She even offered to sign a post-nuptial agreement, giving me everything if she cheated again. I listened to it all with the detached interest of a scientist observing a specimen. This woman had been my wife for 16 years, the mother of my children, the person I'd trusted more than anyone else in the world, and she'd thrown it all away for a man who sold used cars and lived in a studio apartment. I'll fight this, she said finally, when it became clear that nothing she said was going to change my mind. I'll get a lawyer. I'll take half of everything. You're welcome to try, I said. But you might want to consider the fact that I have evidence of your adultery, your lies, and your abandonment of the children. Plus, I've been handling our finances for 16 years. I know exactly where every penny is and where it came from. Elena stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. What happened to you? You used to be so weak, pathetic, easy to manipulate. I was going to say kind. I'm still kind, I said. I'm just not stupid anymore. The hardest part wasn't Elena's betrayal. It was watching our mutual friends choose sides. Jake from work was the first to confront me. Man, I heard about you and Elena, he said, cornering me by the coffee machine on Monday morning. That's rough. But don't you think you're being a little harsh? I mean, kicking her out of the house? She made her choice, I said, stirring sugar into my coffee with deliberate calm. Yeah, but divorce? Come on. People make mistakes. Maybe you should try counseling or something. I looked at Jake, really looked at him. We'd been friends for 8 years. He'd been to our house for barbecues. He'd played with my daughters. He'd listened to me complain about Elena's dismissive attitude for years. And now he was taking her side. Jake, I said carefully, how would you feel if Lisa was sneaking around behind your back, lying to your face, and sleeping with some other guy? That's different. How is it different? Jake shifted uncomfortably. Look, all I'm saying is maybe you should think about the kids. Divorce is hard on children. You know what else is hard on children? Living in a house where one parent has no respect for the other, where lying is acceptable as long as you don't get caught, where marriage vows are just pretty words you say at a ceremony. Elena's a good mother. Elena is a selfish woman who put her own desires ahead of her family's well-being. The fact that you can't see that tells me everything I need to know about your character. Jake's face flushed red. Hey, that's not fair. What's not fair is 16 years of marriage being thrown away for a few cheap thrills with a car salesman. What's not fair is me being expected to just suck it up and pretend it never happened because it makes everyone else uncomfortable. I walked away, leaving Jake standing by the coffee machine with his mouth open. The confrontation with our couple friends was even worse. Mike and Jennifer Patterson had been our closest friends for over a decade. Our daughters played together. We'd vacationed together. We'd been in each other's weddings. They invited me to dinner on Wednesday night, supposedly to offer support during this difficult time. It quickly became clear they had a different agenda. "We think you're making a mistake," Jennifer said over dessert, while Mike nodded gravely beside her. "Do you now?" "Elena came to see us yesterday," Mike said. "She's devastated, David. Absolutely devastated. She knows she's screwed up, but she loves you. She loves the girls. She wants to make this work. She had her chance to make it work. She chose not to." "One affair doesn't have to end a marriage," Jennifer insisted. "Lots of couples work through infidelity. It can even make a relationship stronger." I set down my fork and stared at them. "Are you seriously sitting here in your perfect little house with your perfect little marriage, telling me that I should just forgive my wife for cheating on me? We're saying that maybe you should consider all your options before you blow up your family," Mike said. "My family was already blown up. Elena took care of that when she decided to start sleeping with Trevor." "But the girls," Jennifer began. "The girls will be fine. They'll be better than fine, actually, because they won't have to watch their mother treat their father like dirt anymore." "Elena says you've changed," Mike said. "She says you're not the same person she married." "She's right. I'm not the same person. I'm not a doormat anymore. I'm not willing to be disrespected and taken for granted. If that makes me a different person, then good." Jennifer leaned forward, her voice taking on that condescending tone that certain women use when they think they're being helpful. "David, I think you're having some kind of midlife crisis. All this boxing and socializing and acting like you're single. It's not healthy. What's not healthy is staying married to someone who lies to you every day." "Marriage is work," Mike said pompously. "It's not always easy. Sometimes you have to fight for it." "I did fight for it," I said, standing up from the table. "For 16 years, I fought for it. I overlooked Elena's selfishness, her dismissive attitude, her complete lack of respect for me. I made excuses for her behavior. I told myself that marriage meant compromise, even when all the compromising was coming from my side." I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair. "You want to know what changed me? I finally realized that I deserve better. I deserve a partner who actually wants to be with me, not someone who sees me as an obstacle to her happiness." "David, wait," Jennifer called as I headed for the door. "Thanks for dinner," I said without turning around. "And thanks for showing me who my real friends are." I drove home in silence, feeling more alone than I had since this whole mess started. It was one thing to lose my wife. It was another thing entirely to discover that the people I'd considered friends were so willing to throw me under the bus to avoid dealing with the uncomfortable reality of Elena's betrayal. But I wasn't really alone. Over the past month, I'd built a new network of people who actually seemed to value my company. Frank at the gym, the guys from the volleyball league, Sarah Kim, who'd become not just my lawyer, but a genuine friend. These were people who didn't know the old David, the doormat David who'd spent 16 years apologizing for taking up space in his own life. They only knew the new David, the one who had opinions and boundaries and self-respect. And they liked him just fine. The showdown happened at Sophie's soccer game on Saturday afternoon. I'd been dreading this moment, the first time Elena and I would be in the same public space since she'd moved out. Sophie had specifically asked both of us to be there, and I wasn't about to let my daughter down because her mother couldn't keep her legs closed. Elena arrived 15 minutes late, dressed like she was going to a cocktail party instead of a middle school soccer game. She'd brought backup, Margot, her enabling best friend, and surprisingly, Mike and Jennifer Patterson. They set up their folding chairs on the opposite side of the field from me, but close enough that I could hear their stage-whispered comments about how stubborn and unreasonable I was being. I ignored them and focused on the game. Sophie was playing midfielder, and she was having a great day. She'd already scored one goal and assisted on another. I cheered loudly every time she touched the ball, and she actually smiled and waved at me during halftime. That's when Elena made her move. She walked over to where I was sitting, flanked by her support squad like some kind of suburban war party. "David, we need to talk," she said, loud enough for the other parents to hear. "No, we don't. We have lawyers for that." "This is ridiculous. We're adults. We should be able to work this out without involving attorneys." I looked up at her, noting the perfect makeup and the outfit that probably cost more than I made in a week. Elena, you had 4 months to work this out. You chose to spend that time in motel rooms with Trevor instead. Several nearby parents turned to stare. Elena's face flushed red. Can we please discuss this privately? There's nothing to discuss. You made your choice. I made mine. End of story. What about Sophie and Mia? Don't they deserve to have their parents together? It was a low blow, and she knew it. Using our daughters as emotional weapons was exactly the kind of manipulative behavior that had poisoned our marriage. Sophie and Mia deserve to have parents who treat each other with respect, I said, keeping my voice level. Since you're apparently incapable of that, they're better off with us, living apart. Mike Patterson stepped forward, puffing out his chest like he was about to defend Elena's honor. David, that's enough. You're being cruel. I stood up slowly, and Mike actually took a step back. The months of boxing training had put 20 pounds of muscle on my frame, and I was no longer the soft, apologetic man these people remembered. Mike, this conversation doesn't involve you. I suggest you stay out of it. Elena is our friend. Elena is a cheating liar who destroyed her own family for a few cheap thrills. The fact that you're defending her says more about your character than mine. Jennifer gasped like I'd slapped her. How can you be so heartless? Heartless? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Lady, I gave your friend 16 years of my life. I worked 2 jobs to pay for this house while she played real estate agent with her girlfriends. I took care of our daughters while she was out networking 4 nights a week. I put up with years of being treated like hired help in my own home. I looked directly at Elena. And when I finally got tired of being disrespected, when I finally started standing up for myself, you decided that was the perfect time to start screwing around with some loser who sells used cars for a living. David, please, Elena started. I'm not finished, I said, my voice carrying across the soccer field. You want to know what's heartless? Heartless is lying to your husband's face for months while you're sleeping with another man. Heartless is using your children as an excuse to avoid taking responsibility for your own actions. Heartless is expecting forgiveness when you haven't even stopped doing the thing you're supposed to be sorry for. The entire soccer field had gone quiet. Parents, players, even the referees were staring at our little drama. Yes, that's right, I said, raising my voice so everyone could hear. Elena here has been having an affair with Trevor Daniels, who owns that sleazy car lot on Route 9. She's been sneaking around behind my back for months, lying about girls' nights and work events, while she's actually in cheap motel rooms with her boyfriend. Elena's face went white. David, stop. And when I caught her and gave her a chance to end it, she agreed to my conditions and then went right back to sleeping with him the next week. So please, tell me more about how I'm the heartless one for refusing to be a doormat anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena looked around desperately, realizing that her support squad was suddenly finding their shoes very interesting. Margot was the first to crack. Elena, you said you ended it with Trevor. I did end it. When? I asked. Before or after you spent Thursday night at his apartment? Elena opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. She had no answer because there was no answer that wouldn't make her look even worse. That's what I thought, I said, sitting back down in my chair. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to watch my daughter play soccer without having to listen to any more lectures about forgiveness from people who don't know what they're talking about. Elena and her entourage retreated to their side of the field, but the damage was done. I could see parents whispering and pointing. By Monday morning, everyone in town would know exactly why Elena Chen was suddenly living in a 1-bedroom apartment instead of the nice house on Maple Street. Sophie scored another goal in the second half, and this time when she looked over at me, her smile was bigger than ever. After the game, she ran over and threw her arms around me. Great game, kiddo, I said, hugging her tight. Dad, are you and Mom really getting divorced? I looked down at my daughter, this amazing, strong, intelligent young woman who deserved so much better than the example her mother had been setting. Yes, sweetheart. We are. Is it because of what she did with that Trevor guy? My heart broke a little. You know about that? I'm not stupid, Dad. I heard her on the phone. I saw the way she was acting. Sophie looked over at Elena, who was standing by her car looking lost and alone. I'm not mad at you for leaving her. I'm mad at her for making you have to. I hugged my daughter again, feeling something tight in my chest finally start to loosen. Maybe this was going to be okay after all. 3 months later, I was a different man living a different life. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in Judge Harrison's courtroom. Elena showed up with a bargain basement lawyer who clearly hadn't done his homework. I had Sarah Kim, who'd spent weeks preparing for every possible argument Elena's side might make. It wasn't even close. Elena got supervised visitation with the girls every other weekend, plus one evening a week. I got the house, primary custody, and most of our assets. She got her car, her clothes, and a small portion of our savings account. The court finds, Judge Harrison said, reading from his notes, that Mrs. Chen's pattern of deception and adultery, combined with her abandonment of parental responsibilities during the separation period, demonstrates a fundamental breach of the marriage contract and a disregard for the well-being of the minor children involved. Elena's lawyer tried to object, but the judge shut him down. Furthermore, Mr. Chen's documentation of his wife's infidelity and his own exemplary behavior during this difficult period clearly establishes him as the more stable and suitable primary custodian. Elena was crying by the time the judge finished reading his ruling. Not the manipulative tears she'd used to try to guilt me into taking her back, but genuine grief for everything she'd lost. I felt nothing. After the hearing, Sarah and I went to lunch at a nice restaurant downtown. We'd become close over the past few months, not romantically, but as genuine friends who respected each other's intelligence and integrity. How does it feel to be a free man? She asked, raising her glass of wine in a mock toast. Expensive, I said, thinking about the legal bills. Worth it, though? I considered the question seriously. The past 3 months had been the hardest of my life, but also the most honest. No more pretending that Elena's behavior was acceptable. No more making excuses for her selfishness. No more walking on eggshells in my own home. Yeah, I said finally, it was worth it. That evening, I picked up Sophie and Mia from Elena's apartment for what would be our first official week together as a single-parent household. The apartment was a depressing little place above a dry cleaner, furnished with whatever cheap pieces Elena had been able to afford on her new receptionist salary. Trevor, it turned out, had dumped her 2 weeks after I filed for divorce. Apparently, sneaking around with a married woman was exciting, but dating a broke divorcee with 2 kids wasn't nearly as appealing. How's your mom doing? I asked the girls as we drove home. She cries a lot, Mia said matter-of-factly, and she keeps saying she made a mistake. She did make a mistake, Sophie added, a really, really big one. I glanced at my older daughter in the rearview mirror. Sophie, I know this is hard on both of you. If you want to talk to someone, a counselor or therapist, we can arrange that. I don't need to talk to anyone, Sophie said firmly. I'm just glad we don't have to pretend anymore that everything was okay when it wasn't. Out of the mouths of babes. We stopped for pizza on the way home, something that would have been impossible during the Elena years, when every meal had to be planned, photographed, and posted on social media with some inspirational caption about family togetherness. Dad, Mia said as we waited for our order, are you going to get married again? I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe someday, if I meet someone special, but not anytime soon. Right now, I'm happy just being your dad. Good, Sophie said, because we like having you to ourselves. That night, after the girls were in bed, I sat in my home office, which Elena had always complained smelled like failure and old socks, and reflected on everything that had happened. 6 months ago, I'd been a doormat, a man so desperate to keep his family together that he'd allowed himself to be disrespected and diminished on a daily basis. I'd convinced myself that marriage meant sacrifice, even when all the sacrificing was coming from my side. Now I was something else entirely. Not perfect. I still had work to do on myself, still had trust issues to work through, still had moments when I wondered if I'd done the right thing. But I was free. Free to make my own choices, set my own boundaries, and demand the respect I deserved. Free to be the kind of father my daughters could look up to, instead of the kind of husband who taught them that love meant accepting unacceptable behavior. Free to be myself, whoever that turned out to be. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a split second, I thought it might be Elena with another desperate plea for reconciliation. Instead, it was from Lisa, the teacher from the cycling group. "Hey, David, a bunch of us are going hiking this weekend. Want to join? Fair warning, it's a tough trail, but the views are supposed to be amazing." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "Count me in, I could use some amazing views." As I hit send, I realized I was smiling. Actually smiling. For the first time in longer than I could remember. Elena had been right about one thing. I wasn't the same person she'd married 16 years ago. I was better. The charity gala where this all started was happening again, and this time, I was actually attending. Not because I particularly cared about whatever cause they were supporting this year, but because Sarah Kim had asked me to be her date, and I discovered that saying yes to new experiences was becoming a habit I rather enjoyed. Sarah looked stunning in a black evening dress that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. We made a good-looking couple, and I could see people whispering as we made our way through the crowd. "You know," Sarah said, sipping her wine and surveying the room, "half these people probably think you're some kind of monster for divorcing poor Elena." "Let them think whatever they want," I said. "I know the truth, and so do the people who matter." "Look who's here," Sarah murmured, nodding toward the entrance. Elena had just walked in, wearing a dress that was trying too hard to be elegant and failing. She was alone, which wasn't surprising. Most of our former friends had quietly distanced themselves from her once the full scope of her deception became public knowledge. She spotted me across the room and froze for a moment, then started walking in our direction with the determined stride of someone who'd been rehearsing this moment. "David," she said when she reached us, ignoring Sarah entirely. "You look good." "Thank you," I said politely. "How are you, Elena?" "I'm managing. The girls seem happy." "They are happy. Happier than they've been in years, actually." Elena flinched slightly. "I was wondering if we could talk privately for a moment." Sarah squeezed my arm gently. "I'll go find the ladies' room," she said, giving Elena a look that could have frozen lava. When we were alone, Elena moved closer, close enough that I could smell the perfume she used to wear when we were married. "I miss you," she said quietly. "I miss us. I miss our family." "We're not a family anymore, Elena. We're co-parents. There's a difference. It doesn't have to be that way. We could try again. I've learned from my mistakes. I could be better." I looked at this woman who'd shared my bed for 16 years, who'd given birth to my daughters, who'd once been the center of my universe. She was still beautiful, still charming when she wanted to be, and she was offering me everything I'd thought I wanted 6 months ago. "Elena," I said gently, "do you know what I've learned over the past year?" She shook her head, hope flickering in her eyes. "I've learned that I'm actually a pretty interesting person when I'm not constantly worried about disappointing you. I've learned that I have friends who genuinely enjoy my company, not just people who tolerate me because I'm married to someone they like better. I've learned that my daughters respect me more when I have boundaries and self-respect." Elena's face began to crumble. "Most importantly," I continued, "I've learned that I'd rather be alone than be with someone who makes me feel small." "I never meant to make you feel small." "But you did, for years. And when I finally started standing up for myself, you decided that was the perfect time to have an affair." Elena was crying now, but quietly, trying not to make a scene. "I know I hurt you," she whispered. "I know I made terrible choices, but people can change, David. I can change." "Maybe you can," I said. "I hope you do, for your own sake and for the girls' sake. But it's too late for us, Elena. Too much damage has been done." Sarah reappeared at my elbow, having given us exactly enough time for this conversation to reach its natural conclusion. "Ready to find our table?" she asked, though her tone made it clear she was really asking if I needed rescuing. "Absolutely," I said, offering her my arm. As we walked away, I could feel Elena watching us. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for her. She'd gambled everything on the excitement of a cheap affair and lost spectacularly. But mostly, I felt grateful. Grateful that I'd found the strength to walk away. Grateful for my daughters, who'd shown more maturity through this whole mess than most of the adults involved. Grateful for new friends like Sarah, who saw me as I really was and liked what they saw. "You okay?" Sarah asked as we found our seats. "Better than okay," I said, and meant it. The evening was actually enjoyable. Good food, decent wine, and conversation with people who treated me like an equal instead of an inconvenience. When the dancing started, Sarah and I took to the floor, and I discovered that those salsa lessons I'd taken out of spite had actually been worth the investment. As we swayed to the music, I caught a glimpse of Elena standing by herself near the bar, watching us with an expression of profound loss. For 16 years, I'd been so afraid of losing her that I'd lost myself instead. Now I'd found myself again, and the woman I'd been so desperate to keep was just a stranger in a too expensive dress, mourning the life she'd thrown away. "Penny for your thoughts," Sarah murmured. "Just thinking about how much can change in a year," I said. "Good changes?" I spun her around, then pulled her back into my arms, both of us laughing. "The best," I said. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I meant it completely.